It had been one of those shifts, 12 hours on my feet, barely a break to drink water, let alone breathe. The hospital was understaffed again. Flu season always hits harder than we think it will, and tonight was no exception. I kept telling myself, just one more hour, then I'm home. I'd already pictured the moment, locking my front door, leaving my shoes by the mat, climbing under the covers without even brushing my teeth. Ashburn was still as quiet as I remembered. Suburbs here didn't scream, they whispered. Trees stood still. Lawns were cut too neatly. And on nights like this, even the air felt like it had a curfew. I turned onto my street, past the same mailboxes and porch lights I'd driven by for years, and something didn't sit right. The silence wasn't peaceful tonight, it was watching me. At the next red light I grabbed my phone. No new texts. I tapped the home button, almost out of habit, and put it back down. The light turned green. I turned left toward home. That's when the vibration hit. It was 12:03 a.m. A single message. Pamela, don't go home. That was it. No punctuation. No explanation. Just that. The sender? My parents. Both of them. Shared contact. They never sent messages together. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. I read it again, then again. The third time, I noticed the period missing, and for some reason, that made it worse. No finality. Just floating. I called my mom. No answer. Then Dad. Straight to voicemail. I texted back. What's going on? Nothing. And now I couldn't hear the quiet anymore because my heart was thudding too loud. There was a gas station a few blocks ahead. I pulled in without thinking, parked under the half-broken light. It flickered like it couldn't decide whether to keep shining. I turned off the engine but didn't move. I'd been trained to spot emergencies. Shortness of breath, confusion, cold sweats. None of those patients ever thought they were in real danger until it was too late. Tonight, I was the patient, and my instincts were screaming. I looked up and saw two people standing outside the station near the ice machine. One of them whispered something, then glanced at me. Not just glanced, looked direct, too long. He turned to the other and walked off. I scanned the lot. On the far end, just past the propane tanks, stood Mrs. Collins. Lived 3 doors down from me for 15 years. She caught my eye, then looked away, hurriedly. It felt like I had walked into a conversation that stopped the moment I arrived. Like everyone else had gotten a memo, except me. That gas station, the one I used to stop at for late-night chocolate milk after a shift. It felt like a stage now. Like I wasn't part of the neighborhood anymore. I could barely breathe. My chest tightened. The kind of tight that doesn't come from exertion, but exclusion. The phone buzzed again. I grabbed it. Still nothing new. I wanted to go home. I didn't want to be here anymore. I wanted to crawl into my own bed and pretend that I was just being paranoid. That message. A mistake. Maybe it wasn't even meant for me. Then the lights came. Black SUV. Tinted windows. Government plates. It moved slow. Purposeful. No sirens. No flashing reds. Just presence. Another followed. Then a third. In less than 5 minutes, my street was locked down. I saw men in suits, earpieces in their ears, moving like they'd done this before. One of them looked toward the gas station. Saw me. He raised a hand. Not to wave, just a subtle gesture. Stay put. No voice. No motion. Just authority in the air. And I stayed. Because suddenly I realized, this wasn't about me being in danger. This was about me staying away from something bigger. That message, it wasn't panic. It was protocol. And that scared me more than anything else. I sat there watching them work, block off entrances, talk into radios. One guy even took out a drone. They didn't glance my way again. My fingers hovered over the phone. What am I not supposed to see? Dad had told me once, back when I was a teenager and too curious for my own good. Pam, if I ever tell you to do something without explaining it, it's not because I don't trust you. It's because I trust you enough to know you'll listen. I never liked that logic. And now, sitting in my car, light flickering overhead, phone burning a hole in my hand, I finally understood it. But something didn't add up. What if I wasn't the one being protected? What if I was the one being kept away? I pulled up the message again. Still no reply. Dad, I typed. What's happening? I waited. Screen stayed dark. Just silence. I didn't turn the engine off. My hand stayed on the gear shift, knuckles white. From my angle at the gas station, I had a clean view of the cul-de-sac that used to feel like safety. Red and blue lights chopped through the dark like blades. They weren't there for a fire or accident. This was coordination. SUVs. Black. Silent. Government plates. They moved like they'd rehearsed this. Not a single wasted motion. I saw suits, not uniforms. The kind that carried themselves with power they didn't have to announce. I tried calling again. No answer. And that's when it hit me. They didn't forget me. They chose to leave me out. I watched as the same house I once carried groceries into was wrapped in perimeter tape. No panic, just order. Clean, calculated exclusion, like I was never part of it to begin with. There's a kind of hurt that doesn't sting right away. It settles slowly, like a fog that makes everything seem distant. I wasn't in danger. I was irrelevant. Inside the store, I needed something to do with my hands. I bought coffee I didn't want and stood near the old TV mounted in the corner. The sound was barely audible over the humming fridge, but I heard enough. Authorities confirmed that the family has been cooperating with the CIA for months. The anchor's voice was sharp, practiced, like she'd said it 100 times already. A photo flashed across the screen. My dad, my mom, my sister. 3 brave civilians, the headline read. I dropped the coffee. Didn't feel the heat. Just stared at the screen like it had said my name. But it hadn't. Not once. Not a single word about the daughter who lived less than a mile away. The nurse who worked nights and slept days. A boy near the candy rack muttered to his friend, "Isn't that the house with the nurse?" His friend shrugged. "Nah, it's her dad's place. He's the big deal." I walked out before they could say more. I drove slowly. Not because of traffic, Ashburn sleeps early, but because something in me didn't want to get there. My headlights hit the edge of the security zone, where men in suits directed a few cars away. I rolled down my window, held up my ID. The man looked at it, looked at me, then looked back at the screen in his hand. "Step back, ma'am. This doesn't concern you." "That's my home," I said. He didn't flinch. "Not according to our list." No apology, no confusion, just dismissal. I pulled the car into reverse. No fight, no scream, just left. I parked behind the old grocery store. Used to be a Safeway, now it's just an empty lot and a broken vending machine. No cameras, no eyes. I needed a place where no one was watching me vanish. I tried again. Text? Call? Nothing. I opened social media. My sister's page was flooded with praise, shares, mentions. Someone had even tagged the White House. A comment read, "We're so proud of you 3. The way your family handled this is heroic." 3. I read it 5 times. 3. And that's when the ache turned to heat. Not the kind that fuels rage, but the kind that wakes you up. I thought of the pandemic, 14-hour shifts, patients dying without family. I was there, night after night, holding hands through gloves, explaining death through a mask. But when danger came to our door, they chose silence. Not just toward me, but about me. I was the one they cut, the one they couldn't control, so they excluded. Not for safety, for optics. I stayed in that car a long time. Windows fogged, phone face down, no music, just the hum of old pipes in the building behind me and my own breath. Eventually, I opened the glove box, found the old notebook I used to track vitals and patient notes when we ran out of electronic systems. Pages yellowed, smelled like sanitizer. I clicked my pen. First line, they made me invisible. Second line, I'll make sure they never forget me again. I didn't plan to go back. Not really, but as I sat in that parking lot, phone dark, and my name scrubbed from everything familiar, I realized the garage code at my parents' house hadn't changed in years, so I went. The drive took less than 10 minutes, but I stretched it to 15. I made every red light count. Took the long turn near the community center, drove by the same street lamp that flickered when I was 15 and stayed out too late. When I pulled into their driveway, it was like the house had been embalmed. Still. Cold. No porch light. The kind of quiet that didn't offer comfort. It warned you. I stood there for a moment before entering the code. Same numbers. Same click. Inside, I didn't call out. Didn't expect anyone. The kitchen smelled like nothing. Usually, there was at least a trace of coffee or lemon cleaner, but the air inside was hollow. The power was out. I flipped the switch out of instinct, knowing it wouldn't work. That kind of silence is intentional. You don't accidentally leave a house with no lights, no messages, and no warmth. I told myself I wasn't there for answers. I just want to remember, I whispered. It felt like a lie the second I said it. I walked upstairs without turning my flashlight on. The attic had always been where old things went to die. Seasonal decorations, my baby clothes, even a prom dress or two. But that night, the dust didn't smell like nostalgia. It smelled like something left behind for a reason. I tripped over a box shoved halfway beneath a folded tarp. Not locked, just duct-taped shut. I peeled it open. Photos, cards, report cards, my first employee badge, a letter I wrote at 9 telling my mom she was my hero. Then, letters that didn't belong to me. Typed pages, stamped, government headers, communications between my parents and federal agents. One line jumped out, exclude from all communication. Next to it, in red, Pamela Lamson, there was a birthday card wedged in the middle, from my mom, to the daughter who never needed protecting. I sat down, not because my knees gave out, but because I didn't want to drop the box. Never needed protecting. That was how they justified it. Or maybe I just wasn't worth the trouble. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Every page, every line. It wasn't panic, it was protocol now. Like documenting a patient's decline. Open wound, track vitals, mark time of last breath. I checked the time. 3:12 a.m. Out of habit, I opened our old family group chat. We used to share dumb jokes there. Recipes, weather updates, that kind of thing. My sister's profile picture hadn't changed in 3 years. I tapped on the message history. A week ago. Sister. Should we tell her something at least? Father. No. Don't stir her up. Mother. She'll just make it worse. Sister. That was it. Not a sentence. A thumbs up. That was all I was worth. It hit me harder than anything else. I'd taken bullets in words before, but never in silence. That's the kind of quiet that burns worse than a scream. I screenshotted it. Sent it to myself. Labeled the file, thumbsup.png. I didn't save it out of grief. I saved it to remember exactly how the erasure looked. Back downstairs, I spread everything on the kitchen table. The letter, the screenshot, the birthday card, the message from my sister. I didn't try to make sense of it right away. I lined them up like evidence on a crime board. Not all at once. This wasn't one betrayal. It was layered. Small, quiet, consistent. No one shouted me out. They just lowered the volume until I disappeared, year after year. One meeting I wasn't invited to. One decision I wasn't consulted on. One emergency contact replaced. I wasn't the forgotten daughter, I said aloud to the room. I was the deleted one. And still, no one was there to argue with me. I repacked the box, not as a daughter preserving keepsakes, but as a witness building a case. Before I left, I turned the attic light back on. Maybe as a warning, maybe as a reminder. They left me in the dark. This time, I would leave the lights on. I woke to sunlight pouring in through the windshield, the kind that doesn't warm you, just exposes what you didn't want to see. I was parked outside a 24-hour pharmacy. It wasn't where I meant to end up, but I didn't have anywhere else to go. I checked my phone, battery barely holding, dozens of alerts. I opened the first one and found myself staring at a headline. A brave family of 3 cooperates with CIA in domestic operation. My eyes locked on that word. 3. Below the headline was the photo. My parents and my sister. Not a press photo, not a quick snapshot, but one clearly planned. Hair done, lighting perfect. It wasn't about survival, it was about presentation. I searched my own name. Nothing. I was a nurse, I had credentials, awards, public records, but in this story, I didn't exist. I opened a new folder in my phone's files, named it Proof of Erasure, because I wasn't losing my name quietly. I drove straight to the walk-in clinic. Told them I'd lost my keys and needed to refill an old prescription. The nurse asked my name, typed it in, and smiled. Okay, looks like your emergency contact is... your sister? I blinked. No, that's a mistake. She tilted the screen, friendly. Right here, last updated 9 months ago. I froze. 9 months ago, I'd been here. With my dad. He'd insisted on waiting in the lobby. I swallowed hard. Can you print that? The nurse hesitated, then nodded. I walked out with the paper in my bag. It wasn't just my name being left off headlines. They'd rewritten me in systems, institutions, medical files, erased me by design. Back at their house, I didn't knock gently. I knocked like I meant it. The door opened. My mother stood there. No smile, just a flat expression. "You're not supposed to be here." That line, I'd heard it before, from agents, from strangers, but hearing it from her? I stepped inside anyway, walked straight to the kitchen table, opened my bag. I laid everything out, screenshots, printouts, the contact record from the clinic. She didn't try to stop me, my voice didn't tremble. "So you didn't just cut me out, you rewrote my life." My father entered from the hallway, said nothing, looked at the papers like they were clutter. My mother finally spoke. "It was for your own good." I laughed, bitter, tired, real. You don't get to silence someone and call it protection. Her face cracked for a moment, but she said nothing more. I turned to my father. "Show me the files, the ones you signed, the ones with my name." He didn't answer, but he left the room and came back with a thick folder. He set it on the table like it was nothing. I opened it. Dozens of letters, contracts, memos. One caught my eye. Yellow highlight across the center. Pamela Lamson, exclude from family-sensitive ops. My name, typed in capital letters. Then, crossed out, not redacted, not hidden, crossed out. A line drawn through me like I was a mistake. I placed my hand over the mark. No tears, no shouting, just quiet. "You didn't just cut me out of your lives," I said. "You made sure the world never knew I was in them." Nobody argued. Nobody offered to explain. I packed the folder in my arms like it was a casket, walked toward the door. "Pam," my mother said softly behind me. I didn't turn around. Every good nurse knows triage isn't about saving everything. It's about knowing what's too far gone. I texted my sister from the driveway. "Your silence is louder than you think. I'll make sure it echoes." I didn't go home. I didn't go back to the hospital. I drove west until the road emptied out and the streetlights thinned. I pulled into a roadside motel that probably hadn't seen fresh paint in a decade. I gave them a fake last name. No one asked questions. That's the kind of place it was. A holding cell for secrets and breakdowns. I sat on the bed with the lights off, just the low hum of the fridge and the ceiling fan above me, spinning like it didn't care who was watching. I didn't cry. Couldn't. My body wasn't offering me that grace. I just stared. Sometimes silence isn't absence. It's something thick. Something that wraps around your chest and waits for you to break. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from too much stillness. I grabbed a pen, wrote a few words in a notebook, closed it, didn't reread them, couldn't stand to. I used to believe silence was a gift, a form of strength. But this kind of silence was designed to choke. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "We know you're hurting, but please don't overreact." Overreact. It sat on the screen like it owned the place. I stared at it. No reply. Just a screenshot, then I deleted the thread. Funny thing is, that wasn't the first time I'd been called too much. I was dramatic when I cried after my dog died. I was emotional when I spoke up in church. I was difficult when I asked why we never celebrated my graduation. Too much. Too loud. Too aware. They raised me to care, then punished me every time I did. I flipped through old messages, hunting for one, just one, where someone in that family said, "You're right," or "I hear you." Nothing. Not once. I wrote on the motel's stationery, "My truth doesn't need your permission to exist." Then I set the pen down like I was done, even though I knew I wasn't. The tablet I'd grabbed from my mother's kitchen drawer was still in my bag. I charged it for 10 minutes. Battery limped to 12%. The password. Still my father's birthday. Some things never change. I opened the archived folder. That's where they always saved things they didn't want seen, but weren't ready to delete. The first email hit me like a brick. "We agreed. Don't involve Pamela. She overreacts. She'll damage the optics." Another response. She's too soft. Keep her out. And then my sister, calm as ever. I've kept her quiet before. I'll do it again. I stared at those lines, read them 3 times. 4. Not because I didn't understand, because I did. This wasn't silence. This was strategy. I sat on the floor, cold linoleum against my back, TV from the next room leaking through the wall, some game show, some laughter, life going on. I didn't yell, didn't scream into a pillow or punch a wall. I sharpened. I opened my laptop. New folder, unspoken archive. One by one, I began compiling screenshots, quotes, timelines, message threads. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it because it was necessary. There's a moment when you stop hoping they'll see your side, and you start building your own. If I ever thought silence made me weak, I whispered, I forgot how much damage can be done in a whisper. I didn't know what came next, but I knew it wouldn't be silence. I forwarded the email thread to a contact from work, a legal nurse who once told me, if you ever need someone who knows how to handle dirty records, call me. Subject line, this needs to be looked at. No context, no explanation, just movement. I closed my laptop, reached into the duffel bag, pulled out the old box I'd found in the attic, now heavier with papers that said less about my past and more about their intentions. I printed the email, folded it, tucked it inside. I stood in front of the mirror. If they wanted me erased, I said, they should have made me quieter. I picked up my phone, texted my sister, 2 words. You chose. By morning, I was back on my own street. I didn't park in the driveway, just pulled up along the curb and sat for a second longer than I needed to. The front door looked the same, but I wasn't expecting anything familiar inside. I wasn't coming back to live. I was coming to collect, to build the other half of the story they'd tried to bury. When I opened the door, I didn't see a mess. I saw precision. The couch cushions were untouched, the rug still aligned with the hardwood planks. But every drawer that had once held a piece of me was empty. Not stolen. Removed. My laptop? Gone. The flash drive I kept in the tea tin above the microwave? Not there. My journals, the printouts, my files, every page of what I'd collected from that house, my parents, and my own past. Wiped. I walked to the bedroom, opened the closet, empty hangers, no overnight bag. Even the childhood photo album I'd kept under the bed was missing. That's when I knew. This wasn't theft. This was a sweep. Professional. Clean. Like someone had practiced. I sat down on the edge of the mattress and let it settle. They didn't just want me to stop talking. They wanted nothing to exist that proved I had ever been part of any of it. I walked into the kitchen, dumped the trash, habit, and caught something. A small slip of paper crumpled at the bottom of the bin. A receipt. Coffee shop. 2 blocks away. Time stamped from last night. I walked there. The place was quiet. The barista looked up and gave the kind of smile you give someone you think you've seen before. I held up the receipt. Do you remember who sat here yesterday around this time, using a silver MacBook, cracked corner? He nodded. Yeah, I remember. Black jacket, sat near the outlet, didn't order much, stayed for hours, barely moved. Camera footage? He shook his head. You'll need a warrant for that. Of course I would. They hadn't just erased my documents. They were using them. My things. On my notes, my life. Now part of something I wasn't even allowed to see. I didn't say goodbye. Just walked to a corner store, bought a burner phone in cash, and walked home. Or what used to be home. By late afternoon, I was at the DMV. I needed something to prove I still existed in systems I didn't control. The clerk at the desk took my ID, typed something into her screen, frowned. That word. What? I asked. Your birth date is... pending correction? I blinked. Excuse me? She kept typing. It's flagged for inconsistency, not removed, just under review. I kept my voice steady. What does that mean? Hold on, let me grab a supervisor. She stepped away. A few minutes later, a man in his 60s stepped out, motioned me to the side window. Ma'am, he said quietly, I don't know who you pissed off, but your data trail, it's being cross-verified by at least 3 departments. I exhaled through my nose. Understood, I said, and I walked out without looking back. Back at the motel, I opened a blank document and titled it, The House with No History. And I started writing, Not just what they took, but what they couldn't. My memories, my timestamps, what I knew to be true because I'd lived it, not because a database told me so. I uploaded the scans I still had, emails, images, handwritten notes, to a cloud drive. Encrypted, double-backed, scheduled to release automatically if anything happened to me. Then I wrote, "They erased what I had, but what I've become, that's not stored in drawers." I didn't cry. I didn't punch a wall. I didn't rage against what was gone. I just decided I wasn't walking back through that front door again until I held something they couldn't scrub. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was building a strategy. Before sunset, I called someone I hadn't spoken to since the pandemic. A woman I'd once helped on a legal forum. She'd lost a brother to medical neglect. We'd exchanged a few private messages. She had a background in whistleblower protections. She picked up on the second ring. "I remember you," she said. "You want to meet? Neutral ground. DC, tomorrow? I'll send a location." That was all. That night, I packed a bag. Only what mattered. My ID. Hard copies. A backup drive. The original email from my sister. The one where she called me too soft. I zipped the bag slowly. Walked once through the house. One final look. At the door, I paused. "You took everything," I whispered. "But you made one mistake." I'm still here. The sun had long since gone down by the time I reached the cafe in DC. It was the kind of place that made you feel watched and anonymous all at once. Low lighting, one slow fan, and music just loud enough to cover a conversation, but not so loud you'd have to raise your voice. I spotted Silas before he spotted me. Or maybe he knew I was there the whole time. Hard to tell with men like him. He looked older than I remembered, older than the photos from the forum. But his eyes were sharp, focused. I sat down across from him. No small talk, no smiles, just the table between us and a chipped sugar jar. He slid a flash drive toward me. "You weren't supposed to survive this," he said. I didn't ask what this meant. I was tired of asking for clarity from people who preferred I stay in the dark. He opened a manila folder. Inside, screenshots, movement logs, metadata tied to my phone, timestamps that matched grocery runs, commutes, even the late-night gas station pause. I stared. "Oh, you were watching me." "Not me, them." He explained it like a checklist. I wasn't flagged as a threat. I was marked as a pivot point, a trigger. Your routines were predictable, your circle, tight. It made surveillance easy. Anyone who got too close to you, especially if they were already under suspicion, stood out fast. I leaned back. So I was bait. Unwittingly. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I'd felt used before. But this was different. This was tactical. He pulled another page from the folder. It was a photo, grainy, of me with someone I hadn't seen in over a year. Derek. His arm was around me. We were walking near the Potomac. I remembered that day. We'd fought about nothing, then walked for hours in silence. "He was flagged before he met you," Silas said. "But once he did, your proximity accelerated the case." I nodded slowly. I remembered how he suddenly got interested in data security, how he insisted on installing those VPN apps on my phone. Claimed it was to protect me from phishing attacks. I thought he was just being tech-savvy, protective. Turns out, he was protecting himself, through me. I opened our old texts. One of the last ones stood out now. "Heading home. You still parked at the hospital?" At the time, I'd thought it was sweet. Now it read like a log entry. My gut tightened. I asked, was he trying to hide or trying to be found? Silas didn't answer. He didn't have to. He slid one last document across the table. An internal family risk profile. The title? Contingency Protocol, Civilian Proximity Assessment. My name was listed under Tier 2, Expendable Civilian. "You were the only one they couldn't flip, so they wrote you out," he said. "You were clean, but you were also the easiest to cut loose." I stared at the paper, at the words expendable, uninformed asset. It's one thing to be ignored, another to be erased, but to be used as a silent tripwire for someone else's downfall. That hits differently. I folded the document, not neatly. "You know," I said quietly, "I always knew I wasn't the favorite." Silas looked at me, his voice low. But you didn't know you were disposable. I didn't answer. I didn't have anything left to say. Outside, I thanked him. Said I'd pretend we never met. He nodded once. I walked down the block, into the hotel lobby with free Wi-Fi, sat near the back, set up a hotspot, logged into the secure cloud. I uploaded everything I had. I clicked open a new document, titled it, Erased by Blood. Then I recorded my voice. This isn't revenge. It's recovery of identity, of truth, of voice. I didn't post it, not yet. I scheduled the first draft to send to 3 encrypted emails. 1 local news outlet, 1 independent watchdog, 1 anonymous leak site. I wasn't looking to blow it all up. I was just making sure I couldn't be deleted again. Just as I closed the laptop, my burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. You were never supposed to look this deep. Stop now. You still have time. I stared at the screen. No punctuation, no threat, just a warning. I replied, I'm already too far in. Then I whispered to myself, to no one at all. And I haven't even begun to speak. I stayed up through the night, not from adrenaline, not from fear, just resolve. When you've spent your life being told to quiet down, sit back, not cause trouble, you get good at preparing in silence. So I opened the files, every screenshot, every voice note, every timestamp, laid them out like I used to lay out supplies during intake triage. The cloud drive was ready. I created 2 copies, one with a time lock for automatic release, the other with a link for a reporter I knew wouldn't flinch. I wrote the caption first. This isn't revenge, it's reclamation. Then I pressed record. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't plead. I spoke the way I had learned to speak to dying patients, clear, slow, steady. I named names. I explained patterns. I showed the paper trail. I ended with 1 image, the old white teacup with the red maple leaf, the same one from my mother's kitchen, now sitting beside my laptop, empty. Once, that mug meant comfort. Now it was a reminder of how easily trust can be poisoned. I uploaded the video, cued the release for 6 p.m., then shut the laptop, and waited. At 5:57 p.m., I got the notification. Your video has been flagged for potential misinformation. Upload suspended pending review. Of course they were already waiting. I didn't panic. I clicked open the secondary platform, the one no one talks about on record. My burner phone connected to the hotspot. I dragged the file, hit go. And it was live. No graphics, no intro music, just my voice, just facts. At first, 5 viewers, then 11. Then comments started to pour in. Is this real? Wait, why isn't this on the news? I know this woman. She took care of my mom in ICU. Screenshots started circulating. People clipped sections, shared them. My name trended in a forum that usually talks about broken veteran systems, and the truth started running faster than the ones trying to chase it down. I stepped outside for air. The sky was dimming, the edge of purple swallowing the last of the blue. I leaned against the railing outside my room, barefoot, hoodie zipped, phone in hand. The world felt still. Then I heard it. Miss Pamela? The voice was small, honest. Emma, the little girl from 3 doors down. She walked over with the slow certainty only kids have. In her hands, folded paper, crayon edges. She handed it to me like it was a secret. I saw you in there, she said. You didn't scream. I unfolded the paper. A drawing. Me, sitting on a chair in a square room. No windows. A red lamp overhead. The walls dark. The door locked. Just me. Alone. Did you draw this? I asked. She nodded. When? Last week. You were quiet. I knew you were real. I crouched down. Met her eyes. You saw me? She nodded again. Adults pretend not to, but kids, we see stuff. I swallowed back something that tried to rise in my chest. Something not quite grief. Not quite relief. I hugged her gently. Thank you. That night, I didn't sleep. And in the morning, I didn't wait for anyone to come to me. I walked back to the house, not with fire, with quiet. I stood on the edge of the front lawn, didn't step past the sidewalk. The door opened. My sister stepped out, her eyes swollen. Behind her, my mother, still in her robe. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I reached into my pocket, pulled out Emma's drawing, and walked up to the mailbox. I slid the folded paper inside, then turned around. No one tried to stop me. No one called my name. Some stories end with closure. Mine just needed to be heard. By noon, the video had crossed 100,000 views. It was shared across forums, reposted in places where truth usually dies too quietly. A few journalists picked it up. The brave kind. The ones not owned by ratings. They didn't tell my story, they just showed it. The last frame of the video was Emma's drawing. Over it, white text. Even if they silence you, someone is always watching. Someone believes you. I didn't care about going viral, but I did care that for the first time, I wasn't screaming into a void. My voice had landed, and it echoed. It had been 2 weeks since the video went live. 2 weeks since I stopped being erased in silence and started existing out loud. The media split down the middle. Some platforms shared it under the banner of "Community Whistleblower Reveals Truth." Others called it unconfirmed, lacking substantiation, or worse, drama from a disgruntled relative. I didn't argue with either. I wasn't looking for applause or debate. But what I didn't expect was the messages. Over 3,000 emails, DMs, and forum replies from strangers, many of them older, quieter, but not soft. They used words like seen, understood, and thank you. A few sent nothing but a photo of a handwritten letter they never got the courage to send their own families. My parents never reached out. My sister did, once. "You didn't have to destroy us." That was the message. I didn't reply. Some words are written more for defense than dialogue, and I was done writing back to silence. I moved out of Ashburn. Rented a small unit in Arlington, closer to work but farther from memory. 2 bedrooms, one of which I turned into an office. Minimalist, clean, not sterile, just mine. It didn't need to look like a Pinterest board. It needed to feel like air. There's a new teacup by my bed. No maple leaf, no story behind it. Just white ceramic. Smooth, clean. I donated the old one without saying goodbye. Not out of anger, but out of finality. Some things aren't symbols, they're just dishes. And when they chip, you don't glue them back together. You throw them away. You move on. I take walks now. Not to think, just because I can. I don't watch over my shoulder as much. Don't double check if my name still exists in databases. I trust that I've backed myself up enough to be undeniable. That was never the goal, but it's a comfort. Last Friday, I was invited to speak at a panel on digital identity at the public library. There were 15 people in the room, maybe 20. One of the speakers was a woman in her 60s who lost custody of her child to a man who used his family's money to bury court records. We didn't have the same story, but we understood each other. During QA, someone asked me, "If your family reached out sincerely now, would you forgive them?" I didn't flinch. "Forgiveness isn't the same as re-entry," I said. "I don't need them in my life to have peace." There was a pause. A few people nodded. One woman teared up and touched her necklace like it anchored her. I didn't speak again that night, didn't need to. I walked home thinking less about what I said, and more about how it felt to say it without shaking. A week later, my lawyer contact called. "You might want to know," she said. "There's an internal audit happening, agency level. Your father's name is all over it." I didn't react. "And your name's in the documentation too, not buried, bold. You're being cited as the origin point for the flag discrepancies." I exhaled slowly. "I kept records," she laughed. "You always did document better than anyone." I didn't smile. Not because I wasn't satisfied, but because satisfaction isn't the same as justice. I wasn't chasing punishment. I trusted gravity. What falls, falls. They erased me for safety, I said later that night, recording a voice memo I'd never send. But I recorded them for history. Sometimes I still wake up expecting silence. But now, when it comes, I don't flinch. I wrote a letter the next morning. Not to send. To finish something inside me. To the girl I was before all this, it began. I didn't write pages, just what needed to be said. You wanted answers. You got them. You wanted someone to admit they hurt you. They never did. But you survived anyway. I folded it once, put it in a box I'd bought the day I moved into the new apartment. The kind with a lock and no label. Not to bury it, just to mark it as finished. When you're no longer waiting for an apology, you're finally free to write your own ending.